The impossible challenge. Commander Elena Reyes tried not to fidget as the 7 alien representatives of the Galactic Federation studied her team with expressions ranging from curiosity to undisguised contempt. The Federation embassy on Earth's moon was designed to accommodate multiple species, but the humans still felt distinctly out of place. Elena had expected some skepticism, but not this level of dismissal. "You wish to petition for Federation membership," stated Archminister Xantos, his translucent skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. "Yet your species has only achieved interstellar travel within the last decade." "That's correct," Elena replied, straightening her uniform. "Earth United believes we have much to offer the galactic community." A ripple of something like amusement passed through the council. The Volscian representative, a massive arthropoid named Krevka, clicked her mandibles. "Your confidence is admirable, but misplaced," Krevka said. "Most species spend centuries proving their stability before consideration." Elena had anticipated this argument. "With respect, we believe our rapid development demonstrates our adaptability. Humanity has compressed millennia of technological advancement into just a few centuries." "Yes," hissed Morella, the Serpentine Sorek ambassador. "We've observed your accelerated evolution. It concerns many of us. Species that advance too quickly often destroy themselves or others." The tension in the room thickened. Dr. Aidan Chen, Earth's leading xenoanthropologist, stepped forward beside Elena. "We understand your caution," he said, "but perhaps there's a way we can demonstrate our readiness." The 7 council members exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, Xantos leaned forward. "There is one test we sometimes offer to exceptional cases." Something in his tone made Elena uneasy, but she nodded. "We're listening." A holographic display activated in the center of the chamber, showing a stormy, rust-colored planet. "Terrace 7, announced Xantos. "A world in the habitable zone of the Rigelian system. 3 separate Federation species have attempted colonization. All failed within months." Elena studied the projection. Acid storms swept across barren plains. Volcanic activity pocked the surface. Atmospheric readings scrolled past. Corrosive gases, extreme radiation, gravitational anomalies. "The challenge is simple," continued Xantos. "Establish a self-sustaining colony on Terrace 7 within 1 standard galactic year. Succeed, and your species will earn provisional Federation membership. Fail. And what happens if we fail?" Elena asked, though she already knew. "Earth will be classified as a developing world, ineligible for reconsideration for 50 years. All current interstellar treaties would be reconsidered." The implications were clear. Without Federation protection, Earth would be vulnerable to exploitation by unaligned powers. Their fledgling colonies on Mars and Europa would lose crucial technological support. "Additionally," added Krevka, "you must succeed without direct Federation assistance. Your proven technologies only. No importation of advanced systems." Dr. Chen whispered to Elena, "This is impossible. They're setting us up to fail." Elena studied the projection again. The planet was a nightmare, but not, perhaps, an impossible one. Humanity had survived on Earth through ice ages, plagues, and self-inflicted near extinctions. They'd transformed from cave dwellers to spacefarers in an evolutionary blink. "We accept your challenge," Elena declared. The alien delegates didn't bother hiding their surprise, or in some cases, their amusement. "Very well," said Xantos. "You have 1 standard year from today. A Federation observation post will monitor your progress. Good luck, Commander Reyes. You will need it." 3 weeks later, Elena stood in the cavernous assembly hall of the Earth United Space Agency headquarters in Nairobi. The room buzzed with tension as she faced the 100 specialists she personally selected. "Let's be clear," she began without preamble. "The Federation doesn't expect us to succeed. They've chosen Terrace 7 because it's killed everyone who's tried to live there." Holographic displays activated around the room, showing the hellish conditions. Temperatures swinging from -90 to +60 Celsius in a single-day cycle, atmosphere thick with sulfuric compounds, and radiation levels that would kill an unprotected human in hours. But here's what they don't understand about humans, Alina continued. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us at every turn. Our entire history is about surviving where we shouldn't. And unlike the Federation species, we don't just adapt our environment. We adapt ourselves. Dr. Maya Patel, head of the Xenobiology Division, nodded emphatically. The Federation approach to colonization is fundamentally different from ours. They terraform first, then settle. We've always had to live in hostile conditions while slowly changing them. Exactly, Alina said. And we don't have their resources or time. So we're going to do this the human way. Messy, unconventional, and successful. She divided them into teams, each focused on a critical survival aspect. Habitat construction, food production, energy generation, medical support, and resource extraction. But her most controversial decision was her choice of colonists. I'm not sending scientists and soldiers, she announced to the stunned project leaders. I'm sending survivors. Her recruitment team scoured Earth for people who had thrived in extreme environments. Deep-sea engineers who'd lived in crushing pressures, volcanic researchers who worked amid toxic gases, radiation cleanup specialists from old nuclear disasters, isolationists who'd spent years in Antarctica. Most controversial was her inclusion of 20 former prisoners, people who'd survived brutal conditions with minimal resources and developed unorthodox problem-solving skills. These people don't just endure hostile environments, she explained to skeptical government officials. They master them. They think differently because they've had to. While the recruitment continued, Dr. Jason Wong's engineering team developed habitats unlike anything humanity had built before. Instead of traditional rigid structures, they designed semi-organic shelters with self-healing polymers and adaptive configurations. They can reconfigure based on external conditions, Wong explained during a demonstration. The prototype habitat shifted and flowed like something alive, thickening its walls against simulated acid rain, extending thermal sinks during heat waves. It's more like growing a coral reef than building a house, he added. The most critical innovation came from Dr. Patel's team. Rather than trying to make humans survive Terra 7's environment, they developed a biological interface, a second skin that would allow humans to partially integrate with the planet's ecosystem. Every previous colonization attempt treated Terra 7 as the enemy, Patel explained. We're taking the opposite approach. We'll become part of it. The neural-linked exomembrane would process the atmosphere, regulate body temperature, and even harness the planet's radiation for energy. The technology was experimental and potentially dangerous, but without it, survival beyond a few weeks would be impossible. 6 months after accepting the challenge, the first colony ship, the EUS Horizon, was ready for launch. 150 colonists prepared to depart. Engineers, medical specialists, agricultural experts, and the diverse group of survivors Alina had insisted upon. On launch day, representatives from all 7 Federation species arrived to observe. Their skepticism remained palpable. Your ship appears primitive, noted Krevka, studying the horizon with compound eyes. By your standards, perhaps, Alina replied. But it's built specifically for Terra 7. Like us. You still believe you can succeed where the Viridians failed? Asked Morella. Their environmental adaptation technology was centuries beyond yours. Alina smiled. The Viridians tried to conquer Terra 7. We're going to embrace it. As the horizon lifted off, Alina watched the Federation observers. None of them believed humans would survive. They saw the mission as humanity's introduction to cosmic humility. They didn't understand that humans had always lived on the knife edge of extinction. Earth itself had nearly killed them countless times. They'd survived ice ages with sticks and fire. They'd crossed oceans on wooden boats. They'd endured plagues, wars, and self-made disasters. Humans didn't thrive despite adversity. They thrived because of it. The horizon vanished into the sky, carrying humanity's first wave of colonists toward Terra 7. They had 6 months to establish a foothold before Elena would join them with the second wave. 6 months to prove that humans could survive where no one else could. 6 months to change humanity's future among the stars. Becoming the impossible. The Terra 7 atmosphere tore at the horizon's shields with savage intensity. Inside the colony ship, Dr. Emilia Rodriguez gripped her harness as the craft juddered violently. Gravitational anomaly, reported Captain Sato from the flight deck. Compensating. The descent wasn't supposed to be this violent. Emilia exchanged glances with Marcus Jones, the ex-convict who'd become her unlikely friend during the journey. His eyes were calm, a man familiar with situations spiraling out of control. Federation data was wrong, Marcus observed quietly. This planet's worse than they told us. 2 hours later, as the first structures of Colony Hope took shape on the rust-colored plain, Emilia realized how right he was. The atmospheric corrosion had already begun eating through their outer equipment layers. The radiation levels were 22% higher than predicted, and the indigenous microbes in the soil were far more aggressive than any sample had suggested. "We have 36 hours before the next acid storm," announced Director Quaimose, studying weather projections. "The habitats must be operational by then." They worked without rest, deploying the semi-organic shelters. Unlike traditional structures, these literally took root in the alien soil, burrowing stabilization tendrils and establishing the symbiotic relationship Dr. Wong had designed. 28 hours in, disaster struck. A pocket of subsurface gas erupted beneath the primary habitat cluster. 6 colonists died instantly. 11 more were critically injured. "The Federation is watching," Director Osai reminded them grimly. "They expect us to evacuate now, to admit defeat." No one suggested retreat. Instead, they adapted. Marcus Jones, who'd once survived 3 years in a maximum security prison by creating tools from seemingly nothing, led a team that redesigned the habitat anchoring system. They incorporated early warning sensors derived from the colony's medical imaging equipment. "Prisoners learn to see patterns in chaos," he explained. "That's how you survive." By the time the acid storm hit, the modified habitats were secure. The colonists watched through molecular reinforced viewing panels as caustic rain dissolved the unprotected equipment they'd been forced to abandon. The losses were severe, but survivable. That became the colony's unofficial motto: severe, but survivable. As weeks stretched into months, the colonists endured one catastrophe after another. The planet seemed determined to reject them. But with each crisis came adaptation. When traditional agriculture failed in the toxic soil, hydroponic systems were redesigned to incorporate filtered local elements. When power generation systems couldn't withstand the extreme temperature fluctuations, they developed distributed networks that could sacrifice portions without total failure. Most importantly, Dr. Rodriguez's team began implementing Dr. Patel's neural-linked exomembranes. These living interfaces, partly technology, partly engineered biology, allowed humans to process Terra 7's toxic atmosphere in small doses. The first trials were painful and dangerous, but by the 4th month, colonists could work outside the habitats for limited periods without conventional environmental suits. "We're not just surviving here," Dr. Rodriguez reported to Elena during their weekly quantum communication. "We're beginning to understand this place. It's not trying to kill us. It just operates on different rules." The breakthrough came from an unlikely source. Aisha Mbeki, a former deep-sea mining engineer, discovered that Terra 7's aggressive indigenous microbes weren't attacking their equipment randomly. They were responding to electrical signals. "They're not just destroyers," she explained to the colony leadership. "They're communicators." Working with the biological interface team, Aisha developed a method to speak to the microbes through calibrated electrical pulses. The organisms responded by becoming less corrosive to specific materials. More remarkably, the adapted microbes began to protect those materials from the planet's caustic atmosphere. "We've been fighting this planet," Aisha said. "We need to become part of its conversation." By the time the second colony ship arrived with Commander Reyes and the Federation observers, Colony Hope had transformed. Instead of the desperate outpost they expected to find, they discovered a thriving community of merely 150 survivors. The habitats had evolved, partially merging with the landscape. Colonists moved about in thin exomembranes rather than bulky environmental suits. Indigenous vegetation had been cultivated around the periphery, creating windbreaks against the frequent storms. Elena couldn't hide her pride as she led the Federation representatives on a tour. Their reactions ranged from disbelief to reluctant admiration. "Your success appears significant," admitted Archminister Xantos, studying a habitat that pulsed and shifted like a living organism. "But is it sustainable?" challenged Krevka. "You've survived 6 months. The challenge requires self-sufficiency for years." Elena smiled. "We'd like to show you something." She brought them to what the colonists called the heart, a central chamber where the colony's most important discovery was housed. Inside a reinforced transparent cylinder, a swirling mass of bioluminescent microorganisms interfaced with complex technology. "This is our symbiotic central processing unit," explained Dr. Rodriguez. "Part computer, part indigenous life form. It manages our environmental systems, predicts weather patterns, and helps us communicate with Terra 7 itself." The Federation representatives stared in astonishment. "You've incorporated the planet's native life into your technology." Morella's serpentine features registered shock. Previous expeditions determined those organisms were too hostile for integration. "They were hostile because they were misunderstood," Elena said. "The planet doesn't want to be conquered or changed. It wants to be communicated with." The final test came unexpectedly. As the Federation Council deliberated on whether Colony Hope truly met the self-sufficiency requirements, the planet delivered one of its most violent storms yet. Sensors barely gave them 10 minutes warning before a catastrophic combination of seismic activity and atmospheric disturbance hit. The Federation representatives prepared for emergency evacuation, certain the colony would be destroyed. But instead of rushing to shelters, the colonists enacted a protocol they called Breath of Terrace. The habitats partially retracted into the ground. The exomembrane-equipped humans gathered in open circles, linked through their neural interfaces to the colony's symbiotic processor. As the storm raged, the colonists didn't just endure it, they channeled it. Their interfaces absorbed and redirected the energy, feeding it into storage systems and back into the planetary microbiome in calibrated pulses. When the storm passed, Colony Hope remained intact. More than intact, it had harvested energy from the very catastrophe meant to destroy it. "This is impossible," whispered Krevka. "No Federation species has ever achieved this level of integration with a hostile biosphere." "Because you all tried to remain separate from it," Elena explained. "Humans have always understood that survival sometimes means becoming one with what might kill you." 3 days later, the Federation Council delivered their verdict. Not only had humans passed the challenge, but their unique approach to Terra 7 had revealed possibilities no Federation species had considered. "Provisional membership is granted," announced Xantos. "With an additional provision, Earth will lead a multi-species research initiative on Terra 7. Your methods have significance beyond this single world." As the Federation representatives prepared to depart, Morella approached Elena privately. "We selected Terra 7 because it had defeated everyone who tried to master it," the Sorek admitted. "We did not anticipate that you would refuse to master it at all." Elena nodded. "That's the difference you didn't understand about humans. We've never survived by being the strongest or most advanced. We've survived by being adaptable, by becoming what we need to be." She looked out at Colony Hope, where humans moved freely across a landscape that had killed every previous visitor. "You expected us to fight an impossible world," she said. "Instead, we became part of it." As the Federation ship departed, The colonists gathered to watch. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were pioneers of a new approach to existence among the stars. Humanity had earned its place in the galactic community not by conquering the impossible, but by transforming themselves to make the impossible possible. And that, Alina knew, was humanity's greatest strength. Not that they could defeat any challenge, but that they could become whatever they needed to be to thrive, even on the most hostile world in the galaxy, even against all odds.